There is a single word that can fill a life with motion and yet leave it hollow. A word that disguises itself as wisdom, as responsibility, as love, but in truth it is a leash that tightens until we forget what it feels like to breathe. The word is should. I should be more grateful. I should be working harder. I should call them back. I should not feel this way. I should be further ahead by now. It is a small word, and yet it has built entire prisons inside us. At first, should feels like guidance, a compass pointing us towards safety, morality, belonging. Parents, teachers, leaders, colleagues, friends, all pass it down as a kind of invisible inheritance. We grow up thinking the map of our lives is drawn not by desire, not by calling, not by curiosity, but by obedience to the endless litany of shoulds. And so we run. We run from one obligation to the next, stacking our days with duties, filling our calendars with demands. We measure our worth by how well we comply. But the strange and bitter truth is this: should does not lead to life. It buries it. I know this ache because I lived it. For years, my life was a library of shoulds. I studied subjects I despised, not because they sparked curiosity, but because someone told me they would make me respectable. I took jobs that drained me, not because I longed for them, but because I was told they were safe, practical, responsible. I nodded at invitations I didn't want to accept, took on burdens I didn't want to carry, all because some unseen law whispered, "You should." And in all of it, I grew hollow. The great contradiction of should is that it feels like moral guidance, but functions like a prison. You can obey every command, check every box, meet every expectation, and still collapse at night wondering whose life you are actually living. I remember lying in bed one evening, the weight of the day pressing down like a stone. I had done everything right. I had ticked every box on the list. And yet I felt strangely absent from my own existence, as though I were performing a script written by someone else. That is what should does. It hands you a script and convinces you it is your own. And the question that finally broke me open was this: whose voice is your life obeying? The cultural lie is simple: should equals worth. From the earliest days of childhood, we are taught that to obey is to be loved. Clean your room, and your parents smile. Earn the high grade, and you are praised. Win the medal, and you are admired. The grammar of love is written in shoulds. By the time we reach adulthood, the script is deeply entrenched. We no longer need parents or teachers to enforce it. The voice now lives inside us. I should marry by this age. I should buy the house. I should have children. I should climb the ladder. I should be strong. I should never rest. The word multiplies until life becomes a hallway lined with doors, each marked should, and we run ourselves ragged trying to pass through them all. We live not out of desire, but out of debt. A debt to voices that may not even be alive anymore, but still echo in our heads. I remember sitting at my desk one night, staring at a checklist I had scribbled on paper. It was filled with tasks, obligations, expectations. To anyone else, it might have looked like ordinary notes, but to me, it felt like a confession, because none of the items were mine. Every line was an echo of someone else's demand, someone else's approval. My hand trembled. until the pen snapped in two, ink bleeding across my fingers. That moment seared me. I had built my life on borrowed laws, and not one of them led to myself. This is the cruelty of should. It convinces us that joy is selfish, that desire is dangerous, that to follow your own compass is arrogance, and so we comply even when it hollows us. But obligation without desire does not make us good. It makes us resentful. I know this because I lived it. I said yes to every request, swallowed every command, and secretly grew bitter. I gave away years of my life trying to earn approval, and in return, I lost the sound of my own voice. Some part of me defended this prison. I told myself, without should, I'd be selfish. Without should, I'd fail the people I love. But the truth is harsher. Shoulds do not create love. They corrode it. They breed duty without joy, service without intimacy, sacrifice without heart. And what grows in that soil is not connection, but resentment. The lie says that to live without shoulds is dangerous, reckless, irresponsible. But the greater danger is to drown in them, to wake up one day and realize you have lived an entire life and never once asked, "What do I want?" I can say this plainly now. I lived by shoulds so long I forgot what I wanted, and that forgetting nearly cost me my life. There is a memory from my youth that still presses against me like a bruise that never fully fades. I was 17, sitting at a desk littered with textbooks, preparing for an exam in a subject I hated. Numbers and formulas sprawled across the page, but none of them felt alive in me. I wasn't curious, I wasn't drawn to the material, and I certainly wasn't happy. But when anyone asked me why I chose that course, I repeated the same answer, as though rehearsing a script, because I should. I should study something respectable. I should make my parents proud. I should choose stability over desire. The truth was that I longed to study literature, to wrestle with ideas, to follow the quiet pulse of my own questions. But the voice of should drowned that longing before it ever had a chance to breathe. And so I sat, night after night, cramming for exams in subjects that drained me, wearing the heavy mask of compliance. Outwardly, I appeared disciplined, responsible, obedient. Inwardly, I was disappearing. That season taught me the subtle cruelty of should, and when the results came, I felt nothing. Not pride, not joy, only a hollow relief that I had avoided disappointing others. The years went on and the pattern followed me. At university, I chose a field of study not because it stirred me, but because it was what I should do. At work, I accepted roles that bored me, convinced myself that a paycheck was proof of virtue. I said yes to requests that drained me, nodded along in conversations where I wanted to object, lived entire days where the word should dictated my every step. I can remember evenings when I would sit in my car after work, engine off, headlights glowing against the garage wall, feeling the weight of another day lived for someone else's approval. The hum of the dashboard clock ticked forward, but I felt stuck in place. One moment in particular still haunts me. My son, barely 9, asked me one night at the dinner table, "Dad, what do you love most in the world?" And I froze. Not because I didn't have answers, but because I had lived so long by should that I couldn't hear the sound of my own voice anymore. I gave him some vague reply about family, of course, and work that matters, but deep down, I knew I was dodging the truth. I no longer knew what I loved. That was the cost of living under should. It wasn't just that I was tired. It wasn't just that I was compliant. It was that I had become a stranger to myself. It took years, decades really, before I began to question the very ground beneath those shoulds. For most of my life, I treated them as sacred law, but slowly, in the cracks of exhaustion and emptiness, I began to see them for what they were: borrowed commands, inherited voices, scripts written by others recited as though they were my own. And I began to ask a sharper question. What if desire and conscience are not enemies? What if the voice of want is not betrayal but guidance? What if living by should is not morality at all, but fear disguised as virtue? I started noticing how should operates like a faulty GPS. Every time you think you've arrived, it recalculates. Every time you take a step toward yourself, it pulls you back onto the road of compliance. You keep driving, following its endless recalculations, but you never arrive. That's the futility of should. It promises direction, but delivers only circles. The more I thought about it, the more absurd it seemed. Why did I trust voices that weren't even mine? Why did I let approval become my compass? Whose life was I living, and why had I given them so much power? That's when a detour began to open. Not a rejection of responsibility, not a dismissal of love or duty, but a reclamation of choice. A refusal to live entirely in borrowed scripts. A slow awakening to the truth that only tested obligations deserve to stay, the ones rooted in love, not fear, the ones grounded in meaning, not approval. And in that turning, I discovered a new language. Instead of saying, I should, I began to ask, do I want to? Do I choose to? Does this align with the person I am becoming? At first, the words caught in my throat, stiff and unfamiliar, but the more I used them, the more they felt like oxygen. The truth is this: should builds prisons, want builds life. And I know how dangerous that sounds to some ears. They will say, if we abandon should, we will become selfish. We will ignore duty, we will descend into chaos, but I have lived the opposite. Obligation without desire breeds resentment, not love. Responsibility without choice breeds bitterness, not devotion. It is only when obligation meets desire, when duty meets freedom, that love becomes real. I no longer want to live by the GPS of other people's expectations. I want to walk by my own compass, and that compass whispers, quietly but firmly, test your shoulds. Keep only the ones rooted in love. Because 1,000 shoulds can bury one life, and I am tired of being buried. When I look back now, I see the years I spent as an echo of voices that weren't my own. Parents, teachers, bosses, peers. Their expectations reverberated inside me until I no longer knew where they ended and I began. Every decision was prefaced with, I should. Every day was framed by obligation, every choice bent toward approval, and I mistook this echo for my own voice. But a life built on echoes is not a life, it is performance. And performance, no matter how polished, will eventually leave you hollow. So I began experimenting with a different question. Not what should I do, but what do I want? At first, the answers were small, fragile, hesitant. I want to rest. I want to read something that doesn't matter to anyone but me. I want to say no, even if they frown. Each answer felt like rebellion, but each answer also felt like breathing again. Desire had been demonized in me for so long that I had forgotten it could be trusted. But when I leaned into it carefully, I discovered something startling. Desire was not chaos, it was compass. The things I genuinely wanted were not selfish or destructive. They were honest, tender, humane. I wanted time with people I loved. I wanted work that mattered. I wanted stillness, laughter, presence. These were not indulgences, Lugid. They were the very shape of my humanity. That's when I realized the truth. Should enslaves, but want sets us free. The stone I carry in my pocket now is this: 1,000 shoulds can bury one life. I reach for it when the old scripts rise again, when the voice of obligation threatens to drown me, when guilt creeps in for choosing what actually brings me alive. The stone reminds me that I am not here to live someone else's script. So I want to ask you, whose voice are you obeying? Whose approval dictates the shape of your days? What should is suffocating your soul? And what would it feel like to test that should, to lay it down, to let it go? You do not need to abandon responsibility. You do not need to forsake love, but you do need to remember this. Obligation without joy rots the soul. Duty without desire breeds resentment, not devotion. Love without freedom is not love at all. So take a slow breath, hold your own questions with care, and dare to imagine that the life you want is not a betrayal of the people you love. It may be the truest gift you could give them. Because when you live by want instead of should, you bring a presence that no amount of hollow obedience could ever replace. I see it clearly now, the endless freeway of shoulds. Exit signs pointing everywhere. Marry this way, work that job, earn this approval, silence that desire. And I see myself, younger, driving furiously down that road, following every recalculation, convinced that if I hurried enough, obeyed enough, conformed enough, I would arrive somewhere safe. But shoulds do not lead to arrival. They lead to exhaustion. They lead to a life filled with motion, but devoid of meaning. So hear this blessing offered from the silence I had to fight to find. Stop living the script of should. Write your own. May you lay down the pen that others placed in your hand. May you refuse to keep copying their lines, their laws, their borrowed compass. May you find your own handwriting again, shaky at first, but unmistakably yours. May you release the weight of obligation that never grew from love. May you sift through the shoulds until only those rooted in compassion, integrity, and joy remain. And may you discover that these are enough to guide you home. The world will keep pressing its scripts upon you. It will whisper that you are selfish if you rest, guilty if you refuse, unworthy if you follow your own compass. But carry this stone. Should is prison. And remember that you were never born to live caged. So choose slowly. Choose bravely. Choose what aligns with your being. And when you do, may you find that freedom is not reckless. It is reverent. It is not abandonment. It is arrival. It is not selfish. It is soul. Stop living the script of should. Write your own. And may your life finally belong to you.